Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello. How's it going? Monday afternoon here. Guerilla Sports Off Ice. I'm Jesse Montano. That is Meghan Angley. Avs. Here to talk some Avs and, well, golly jeepers gee whiz, Megan. The last time that you and I were both here on the set, the Avs were struggling to climb back to 500. Not struggling quite as mightily. You know what? I'll let it go. The Avs were looking to crawl back towards getting to 500, looking to build some good feels. They've done that. They're not only back at 500, they are above 500, and they have the Chicago Blackhawks coming into town tonight. You and I haven't been on the pod in about a week. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good.
And it was great to finally see the Avs win again in person. I wasn't at the Anaheim game for those listening, so it was really great to be in a winning locker room for the first time this season for me personally last night.
Yeah, it definitely makes it a little bit easier to walk in there when there's when the vibes are up, because we walked in on some down vibe locker rooms already this morning, and not fun. But Megan, let's there's a few things we're going to talk about today. We of course are going to get into the goalies. We're going to talk a little bit about depth and lines and the way that some of these players are shaking out in the roles that they're being asked to play. But you and I did do a post-game media presser last night. Go check that out right here on the Guerilla Sports YouTube channel. You answered questions from listeners last night about the game, but there was a few things that we wanted to park and save for today. You said you had a lot of thoughts on tonight, and you were actually hoping for, not that you were hoping for more negative questions, but that you had some thoughts on last night's game. So I guess let's start with the first 40 minutes. So I feel like there's a little bit of two different games being played last night. Your thoughts on what we saw from the Avs on the ice in those first 40 minutes. To me, they continue to look like they're getting better every single night.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the attention to details that I think has allowed them to look more comfortable in their own end. I think that their lean management last night through the first 40 minutes disallowed so many opportunities for Ottawa to really get dangerous. And it started, from their blue line too. Like, they were just making it harder for Ottawa to enter, establish the zone, and get pretty set up. And when they were doing that, it's where they felt strong as a team. It's why too, like, when it was just a 2-0 game, Jared Bednar got a little funny with it, with the lines. And I felt like that experimentation was more so warranted from a place of comfort, because everybody was doing the right things. And so he didn't love that he wasn't getting the most from his top guys, and everyone else seems to be doing the right things. Why not try and see a couple of different looks, see if he can get something more from his top guys with those changes? Obviously, that's not how it panned out, but it did feel like the decision to switch around Makar and Malinski, and then of course the 1-2 centers, was born from everybody looks pretty comfortable out there. This is Avalanche hockey that I'm watching right now. I can afford to try some new things and experiment.
And that's something that he's never shied away from. And you made an interesting comment last night, because Casey Mittelstadt and Mikko Rantanen were skating together. And I said to you, I think that should be a pairing in the future, once they get healthy. And you said, yeah, and I love that he's getting those reps in now. Like, this has been something that we have seen from Jared Bednar in the past, where if it's a combination he's interested in, he's going to get some looks at it before he, decides to make that move kind of full time, if you will. But so I thought some of what we were seeing last night was intriguing, and we're going to circle back to that on some of these, line conversations. You made the comment that you thought the third period, you didn't have to just make the comment on that. But like the third period was a vastly different performance than what we saw earlier in the game. And it seemed like things kind of opened up a little bit. The team started running around, and Jared Bednar made the comment after the game, like, it's not that I thought we got complacent or lazy, but it was just a little bit like, okay, we'll be good. We're all good. And they kind of took their foot off the gas. Is that how you saw it?
Yeah, when they strayed from little details like how they defended below their own goal line and their own net front coverage. When I say stray from the details, it's not as if they were just completely not present. They just looked a step behind. They lacked a little bit of the speed and the intensity from the first two periods, and it costed them in a big way. And those are the types of mistakes that if there was just, those first couple strides in and out of the board battles, for example, just had a little bit more zest to them, I think they would have fared better. And they'd done it for the first 40 consistently. So again, I don't know that I'm dogging the Avs from an effort standpoint. It just felt like this is the price you pay, though, when you stray even a little bit from the process.
Well, and I think it's an emphasis on, or it brings up the emphasis of, like, they're shorthanded right now. And they thankfully are in a situation where they've got elite players at the top of their lineup who can help cover up for a lot of that. But I think you're right. When you are depleted like this and you're trying to keep your head above water, there's just so much extra importance on sticking to your game plan. I mean, as close to 60 minutes as possible, because when you do stray too far outside of that, when you're down like this and guys are being asked to play in bigger roles than they would normally play in situations they wouldn't normally play, it's easy to get exposed. For these last 5 games, though, I felt like in the first 4 we were seeing, for the most part, more or less, I think you can make some real arguments in that first game against Vegas that they maybe deserved a better fate. And then again against Columbus coming back home. But it felt like in those first 4 games, we were seeing the Avs struggle to stay afloat with flashes of really good play. And I feel like for the last 5, it's been the exact opposite. They're playing really well with flashes of them struggling and straying away from the game plan a little bit. And I mean, the results, I think, match up with that. The Avs are giving you 45, 50 minutes of really good play right now with some question marks here and there. They're able to clean it up. As we're in those games prior, you were looking for the flashes of good play.
And I think what has maybe separated these last few games from something like the Vegas game, where I agree that they deserved a better fate, is it hasn't come down to strong individual performances like a Mikko Rantanen hat trick. It has felt like something that is more unified and sustainable, that the whole team is doing well. Because you look at the Anaheim game, that was a little close for comfort. I love what they do, though, in San Jose. It is just a good game that feels repeatable. It's not necessarily anything crazy, and you're looking at the lineup going into it, and you're fully recognizing it's a little bit rough still, even with the guys that have been able to come into the lineup. It's still just not where they'd like it to be, but it does feel like there's more of a comfort. They're sort of rounding that corner of making excuses for it, and they're just finding a little bit of chemistry with the players that they have right now. And there's then a little more consistency in the lines that we're seeing. Like, no morning skate, but I could tell you who's playing for the Avs tonight. Well, and I like that.
Right. I remember there was I think it was 2 seasons ago, because Evan Rodriguez was here. So it was 2 seasons ago. Or I remember that being even a talking point of some of the players. Like, we don't know who's going to be on our power play tonight. Like, it was that kind of, and so you're right. It's not quite to that level, which it's just nice to know who's going in your lineup every single night. But you used a word there that I wanted to touch on, because I feel like this has truly been the difference. And I think you're completely right in that what they're doing right now, they're playing repeatable hockey. There's nothing super sexy or fancy about what they're doing. You know, I mean, obviously there's nice plays being made, you know, passing plays and things like that, but like the analytics are matching the eye test right now. And that's when I feel like you are truly in a sweet spot as a hockey team, is when, you know, you have the team that is winning games, but the analytics are saying like, yeah, they're getting their heads kicked in and they are just finding incredible ways to win every night. And you know, that's not always necessarily repeatable. And then you've got moments where it's like, well, the analytics say they're doing great. And it's like, yeah, they've lost 7 in a row. Who cares what their possession numbers look like? And right now it feels like what the metrics are saying about what the Avs are doing on the ice, suppressing opportunities against, generating offensively, is matching what we're watching. And like I said, I feel like that's what you're in today's NHL, today's version of hockey, you're looking for those things to cross over. And I feel like for 5 games, the Avs have done that.
It's true, because you saw it building towards that with the generation of scoring opportunities. You know, that was pretty consistent even through the rough patch, but the difference was the lack of execution, the lack of finish. They were overpassing the puck. And I think in simplifying a little bit of their game and just sort of returning to the basics and also probably gripping their sticks a little less tightly, it has rewarded them. And that's what I think has allowed them to move on from just being a team with a top 5 power play right now. That has been good since the start of the year. And they were sort of banking on that through some games. You know, a lot of their goals were coming from the power play, which is great, but they needed more than that. And that's when the Kivirantas start to step up a bit. Ivan's getting in the mix. Nikolai Kovalenko gets his first NHL goal. That has been the difference maker, I think. And it's all because of sticking to the process that a Kiviranta is able to get on the score sheet. Again, I think we've talked about it enough to say we don't necessarily think that producing at that clip is the sustainable part, but you do expect the depth scoring, and at least at 5v5, to continue to persist because they're doing a lot of the right things. They have been since the start of the year, but it's starting to translate now in results.
Well, and let's even go a step further. And now this is something that I'm going to say a little bit, and I could maybe even go back to some earlier games, and maybe this isn't fully accurate, but like I look at last night, and let's even just take the first 3 goals, right? 2 get punched in from the blue paint on really nice passes, but you're in tight down around the net. And then the other one, the Josh Manson goal, there's 3 Avalanche sweaters between Josh Manson and the net. It's really like, and there's been several times under the Jared Bednar era, or in the Jared Bednar era, where I feel like we've seen them struggle. And then they use that phrase, we got to get back to basics. And what that means is going to the net, going to dirty areas, finding pucks, not being afraid to get your nose dirty, and not being afraid to battle in front. And it's shocking how much that breeds results. And to me, I just look at, again, using last night as the example, I think you could look at this 5-game win streak and say, like, yeah, they're doing the little things. They're doing the little tiny things right and well, and they're willing to make the sacrifices. And, they're willing to play along the wall. They're willing to go to the front of the net. And that's the difference. Not that they weren't doing some of those things in those first few games, but I'd be willing to bet you that they would tell you the commitment just wasn't there. You made the point just a second ago, Megan, that they're not looking for the perfect pass anymore. They're putting pucks in the net and they're following them there. And then, when they are in a position to make plays, I'm losing track of the amount of really nice passes Casey Mittelstadt makes. And I'm losing track of the unbelievable plays that Cale Makar makes to free up a guy. I'm losing track of the amount of times that Mikko Rantanen has drawn defenders in just to hit someone in open ice. Like they're doing the little things. They're taking hits to make plays. They're going to the net. They're playing along the wall. They're supporting the puck in battles. And those are all the little things that, Jared made the comment last night. You pay attention to you hone in on the attention to detail, and it makes a massive difference. To me, their attention to detail is just a little bit sharper right now.
It is. I actually really love this call. I want to key in on some of these goals specifically.
Yeah.
Like the Josh Manson goal starts in their own end. They transition up ice. And so it's Mittelstadt who enters with the puck and pauses to search for the perfect opportunity. So he evaluates a few options before he decides on Manson. All of this is happening so quickly, as you know, it's hockey. And so in that time, he is getting support at that net front to sort of create this conga line, a little bit of a screen, so that when Manson does get the puck, there is a little bit then that is making the line of sight for the goaltender just that much more challenging, so that when Manson gets to the top of the slot, backhands it in, it can trickle under the pad. And I think that is, it all happens so quickly that the way that they establish the zone by creating a little bit to obscure the goalie's line of sight, all in one fell swoop. Mittelstadt too, recognizing these kind of net front options that are emerging, but then Manson right there opting for it with pressure from two skaters who are coming at him along the wall. One makes what Mittelstadt does so impressive, but you have to pay credit too to the other skaters on the ice who are kind of getting inside home plate and making that
not
another
challenging
area. Exactly.
No, you're 100% right. And you know, even if we keep talking about that, because to that point right there, they're driving the net, right? They're not, guys aren't loading up out at the wing for shots. They're driving the net. And that does two things. One, it creates chaos in front of the net, like you're saying. And two, that drives the defense back and gives Manson that space to be able to take those few steps. And then Casey, that pull up and that hesitation draws two defenders in. Like, it's just, you watch that play, and I think you're right to say, let's talk about it a little bit more, because there's so many little things that lead to, oh man, he had a backhander trickle across the goal line. It's like, yeah, but 5 really good things happened in the lead up to that, and that's where you get the bounce, earn your bounces.
Similarly, OC's goal starts with Mitzi retrieving the puck behind the goal line. He just has a knack for finding his guys from behind the net like that, but OC has to be at the net front to receive that puck. And similarly, you kind of pointed this out, Kovalenko also kind of in that area to receive another Casey Mittelstadt pass from a very similar place on the ice, also means that they're making sure to get to the net, and they're lacking some net front presence guys in a Landeskog and a Lehkonen and a Chushkin, but they're finding guys who are stepping up in that way, and it's rewarding them. You know, it's not necessarily in the perfect pass playmaking sequence, though I will say Mittelstadt's playmaking on each of these was a key factor. It also has required the net front guys like a Kovalenko in one instance, and OC in the other, being in the right place at the right time.
Well, and how about OC? You know, the new rule that was put in, was it just last year? Has it been 2 seasons now where if your helmet comes off, you have to pick it up immediately or go to the bench? It's a newer rule. And there's been a lot of players where we have seen still who hesitate, who stop and complain to the ref, who just get up and skate to the bench, and it takes them out of play. OC picks his helmet up, puts it back on, straps still all over the place, and gets to the front of the net. Like, you know, again, that's a small little thing, I know, but again, it's just the commitment, right? And the dedication, and picks his helmet up, throws it back on his head, and jumps right back into the play. Doesn't take himself out of it for a minute. It's a small thing, but make those make a difference. Ends in a goal, right? Goes to the bench, probably doesn't happen.
I'm getting more excited as we're talking about it. Like, even then, going back to the Kovalenko goal, Mittelstadt has to get around Stützle to get to the goal line area to send that puck. And I actually think his initial pass attempt was stopped in trying to juke Stützle, which he still successfully did, but he almost had the puck taken from him off a stick check. He just recovers it as if it was nothing and finds Kovalenko. And when I tell you how fast this is all unfolding, you blink and the entire sequence is already unfolded. It's impressive to me how Mittelstadt has the puck skill to handle that in traffic the way that he does, but also the high IQ to know where Kovalenko is, and he's just, you know, recovered the puck himself. It's just impressive to me. Maybe this is just hockey, right? I'm no. Sitting in awe of how quickly some of these plays have unfolded and how it just seems like the game is slow for Casey Mittelstadt. He slows it down.
Yeah.
Plays on his own terms.
Yes, honestly, he even can like look a little slow out there at times. But I think you're 100% right. He's more just kind of like, this is the pace that the game will be played at for right now. And his vision, we're going to talk more about Casey Mittelstadt in a minute. I think he's a ton of fun. I was actually going to save this super chat, but let's go to it because I think it's a really interesting call out here from our great friend, Vaguely Sober. $9.99 on the super chat. Thank you so much. Always an amazing supporter of us here. Based on Bednar's 10-game chunks, a W tonight is 12 points in 10 games, 60% wins in 10 games, or 96 points over 80 games. Without Gabe, Duren, Nuke, and Lecky, not bad. Also, congrats on 5K subs. Thank you so much. Yeah, head on over. We just broke the 5K mark. So if you're here, haven't subscribed on YouTube yet, go over there and hit that subscribe button. But Megan, let's leave this comment up here for a minute and talk a little bit about this, because when the Avs went 0-4, we had this exact conversation. The Avs break the season up into 10-game chunks. They like to collect 12 points out of every 10 games at worst. That's the minimum. We need at least 12 points in every 10-game chunk, and we feel that puts us in a good spot. As Vaguely Sober correctly points out here, that's 96 points over the course of the season. And again, you'd like to be well above 6-4 in every 10-game stretch. But given that the Avs started the season 0-4, your thoughts on the fact that they have the potential, like we kind of talked about on here, saying, hey, look, this team can still go 6-4 in this 10-game stretch. Suddenly, if you win this game tonight, already at the 10-game mark, that first 4-game stretch is a blip on the radar, and you're basically already past it. Your thoughts on the 10-game chunk here?
You know, I made this arbitrary rule that I don't want to talk about a goaltender controversy until we at least have 10 games to evaluate, because of this 10-game chunk thing that the Avs like to break down the season by. And we're already at that point. But this is doable because we know reinforcement is on the way. And so not only, yes, does this feel repeatable through the rest of the season, but to your point, I expect it to be better.
Yeah.
Outcomes in some of these 10-game stretches. If this is what they can accomplish with the depleted lineup that they have, I think that there's even more to come from this team. Again, I use the word repeatable a lot in this pod, but that's what has been maybe most encouraging in all of this is, one, the bright spot of some of the top guys continuing to be the top guys, but also getting contributions elsewhere. And then knowing reinforcements are soon on the way. You know, a Lehkonen and a Druin are the easy ones, but we get a lot of Landeskog questions. I don't have more of an update on the Landeskog situation, but it was so encouraging to hear Jared Bednar talk about in the excitement around Casey Mittelstadt. It makes him excited to imagine what playing potential exists for a player like that, knowing guys like Nichushkin and Landeskog will also be back at some point. And I just thought it was great to hear him, without prompting, mention Landeskog as a player that they're still expecting back at some point this season. So, you know, throwing out Nichushkin in there as well. You know, he's back in Denver. He's getting on the ice. Reinforcements are on the way, and those are some important players that just make this team even more dangerous. You know, Chicago Blackhawks in town on a 4-game losing streak of their own that they're looking to snap, and they're playing an Avs team on the second leg of a back-to-back, but they recognize this is a team you can never underestimate. They're just a championship caliber team. And I think it's refreshing to hear an NHL head coach say that about the Avs coming off, you know, what was that 0-4 start to the season. I don't think many people felt this was a championship caliber team still, but it is. There's still so many great pieces that are in the lineup right now. And again, reinforcement is on the way.
We said that this group had to keep their head above water before they got those reinforcements, as Vaguely Sober points out here. 6 wins in the first 10-game chunk would absolutely do that. I tweeted it out this morning. The Avs woke up today in a playoff spot. You are 10 games in. It is super silly to be talking about playoff positioning. The normal line of demarcation is American Thanksgiving, where there are real numbers behind if you are not in a playoff spot by November, whatever it is this year, 25th or 24th or whatever, that it's really hard for you to climb back into that conversation. Elliot Friedman has actually crunched his own math, and if you are more than 4 points out on November 1st, the numbers are pretty similar. So, you know, again, that does not mean you have your couple examples in recent years of that not really mattering.
Probably Edmonton as recently as last year.
Edmonton last year, you had St. Louis in whatever that was, 2019, that they were actually in last place in the league on New Year's Day and ended up winning the Stanley Cups. Like, there's obviously exceptions to the rule, but you know what Vaguely Sober called out here, and the fact that the Avs could say on the morning of our 10th game, we're in a playoff spot. Like that's significant given how things started. And I think the fact that they could clock out of this first 10-game chunk with 12 points is that as well. We got any other comments up there, Chloe, that you were wanting to hit? So I don't know if you were.
I wanted to shout out Dean in the chat. He was excited that we're still doing these shows,
Oh.
still covering the Avs coming over.
Yeah. Hey.
I'm glad that he could make it out. Like, I know this is in the lunch hour for some people in the middle of a work day, but we love it when people can join us on game days for something of a pregame show.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. These are always posted right after. So if you can't always catch it live, these are always posted right after. But thanks so much, Dean. We appreciate you coming over and watching. We love to have you guys here. Okay, Megan, real quick, and then I want to get into a little bit more, dive in a little bit more on a few things. Any thoughts on tonight? You just kind of mentioned this is a Chicago team that's looking for a win themselves. You can't take them lightly. Obviously, Connor Bedard, some talent over there. Just your thoughts on tonight, or if you have any.
I hope that the Avs just take care of business, because everything they've done through this point, they should be able to do tonight, even if there is a little bit of fatigue and tired legs. I understand that. I think what will be important is Chicago is likely looking to capitalize on any fatigue as early as possible. So I think that the way this game starts for the Avs is so important. I think they had a good start yesterday. I think they had a good PK early on, and even with the disappointment of the disallowed goal from McKinnon, they played through the entirety of those 20 minutes to where they could score in the 8 seconds left in the period in the first. Similarly, in the second, they played down to the final buzzer of each period within those last minute. That's the only thing I want to see from them, is try to put together a consistent effort from start to finish, period by period. It doesn't have to be high octane, but I think they just need to be thoughtful. I think they need to be responsible. I'd love to see the offense continue to break out a little bit. It felt like when it was a 2-0 game yesterday, they probably had a few more goals in them. I think that's what Jared Bednar was looking for when he was experimenting. So I think they still have more goals in them that they haven't put in the back of the net. Would love to see it, but I don't need that. I just need them to be responsible.
Georgiev has to have a massive night for him individually.
This is a huge piece, because, look, we're going to continue to receive questions around the goaltending situation in Colorado.
We're going to get into it more on this show even.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll put a little pin in it. But
okay.
You're right to punctuate the importance of this game for Alexander Georgiev. Kakinen is still an option. He's been conditioning with the Eagles, and they didn't win their games, but it wasn't because of his performance in net. I don't know how much more time is really needed before the Avs want to consider giving him a look up with the team. And so this is going to be really a big game for Georgiev to kind of decide the next course of action, because they can just as easily just continue to go back to Jussi Saarinen.
Tonight's a big night for Georgie, regardless of the result. If the Avs win this game 7-5, that's not good. He needs a big night for himself. I mentioned on the show last week that Annunen was in the position of playing for his job, playing for his minutes. Annunen went out and rattled off 4 wins in a row. And for the most part, there's third period, you don't love it from Annunen, but it's also not all on him last night. More or less, he went out and had 4 really, really good games. It's Georgiev's chance to match it.
It's true. Annunen's Utah game was really good. He came up with saves that were all him. And I think that's maybe what you wanted a little more of in the third period from Annunen, is just a couple of those saves getting made to bail his team out. Georgiev hopefully isn't in a position where he has to bail his team out, but that's the bare minimum if it is required. Yeah,
he's got to come up with a couple big ones here tonight. But we'll talk a little bit more about just the goalies as a whole. Here coming up, there's a couple players I want to dial in on that we can just kind of rapid fire go through. And then we got a question a lot last night about what we are thinking lines might look like if this Avs group gets healthy. First one I want to talk to you about is Ross Colton. Avoids the injury. I'm sure his hand is still bothering him a little bit, but is able to get back in the lineup, doesn't miss a game, scores another goal. Last night, I believe that puts him at 7, or is that 8 on the season now?
8 now.
8 on the season now for Ross Colton, as he just continues to look more and more comfortable on that top line.
Some people maybe have wanted to discount Ross Colton's performance. A lot of it was on the power play. So he's kind of a PP merchant right now, just receiving great feeds from McKinnon in that bumper spot on a top 5 power play in the league right now. I don't think that's really fair to Ross Colton. You
I
know,
agree.
he's looked really comfortable in that wing spot because that is what is familiar to him through his career so far. I don't hate what I've seen from him down the middle, but I think that has opened the game up for him, just that move alone. And then, of course, he is playing with highly skilled players. That is a difference maker. I've also seen people try to suggest this maybe discounts what Jonathan Drouin did with the team last year. I also disagree. Look, there is absolutely a bump in production that you can account for when you get opportunities to play
Right.
with Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon. I understand that. But you also have to be a certain type of player to, one, keep up with their pace and anticipate their meets. And I think that speaks to where Ross Colton has that high skill player quality in him to play up in the lineup like that I think maybe he was limited by in a third line role last year. I think this is just showing you what potential lurked beneath that you'd probably seen teased at points in Tampa, but even in Tampa, the opportunity to play up in the lineup didn't exist. Kind of made sense then why he's come here. And I think that's what we're seeing, because we talk about how some of these goals that have been scored have happened, and it has been guys right place, right time, and also a commitment to battles. And that is Ross Colton to a T. And I think that is what has allowed him to fit in so well with the top guys. He has the high skill to match theirs, but also that motor that never stops. You know, I think that has really benefited the possession numbers. I think they're able to cycle the puck and sustain more pressure in the offensive zone when you have a player like that who will retrieve pucks as well and will battle along the boards for it. And you see that from a player like McKinnon too, but I think that's why he's fit in so well there.
Well, and not only that, but like, when we hear Jared Bednar talk about this all the time, of you can have a player who will defer when you're playing with Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen. It's like, well, shit, I'm playing with them. I should probably get them the puck. Ross Colton is not afraid to shoot right now, and he's calling for the puck. He wants it on his stick, and you can tell that he understands. I just got to get myself in the right position, and I'm playing with guys that are good enough that they're going to find me.
Yes.
And if I'm doing the right things, I'm going to be in position to score. And like, the puck's hitting his stick, and he's getting it. He's not dusting it off. He's putting pucks to the net. Really high skill finish on the one in San Jose, where Mikko hits him with a great pass. He's on that little mini breakaway, backhand, forehand. Like, he's got the skill, and he's not afraid. Like, I've given Zach Hyman as tough a time as anybody, because it's like, yeah, if you can go to the net with your stick down, playing with McDavid, he's going to get there. But again, you got to be willing to go to the net, and you've got to get your stick on the puck when it comes to you. We've seen plenty of examples of players who cannot skate with top line players. So I think you give Ross Colton a lot of credit. I don't necessarily know if I'm at the point yet where I'm keeping him there when you do get healthy, but look, if by the time the Avs are getting healthy and that comes into question, if he's sitting at 15 goals, no, maybe you do just leave him there. I don't know. But I think you like what you've seen, and if nothing else, you've shown you've got another utility player that can slide up and down.
Absolutely. Like a JT Comfort who served such a big purpose.
Massive.
In the cup run itself. And I think with Colton, it's the commitment to play start to finish. I talk about a high motor, but like his goal last night, it's purely opportunistic. It's kind of a fluky thing, but he immediately capitalized the opportunity, and his initial shot attempt doesn't go through. I think hits the goalie's pad. So he just recovers it himself and lifts it into the net. There's an amount of accuracy that is required that I think maybe we take for granted that you don't necessarily look to a Ross Colton and expect him to have there, but you see the difference in a player like LOC who also has that motor, but the accuracy isn't always there for him. Glad to see him get rewarded with a goal last night as well. But that's the you said it. You did.
I said it, and then I walked downstairs, and you
almost texted you to say you unjinxed yourself, because Jesse broke Eustace on it, and
it wasn't just me. I found out at the exact same moment that I said that to you, Arif and Bolding had started writing shutout post-game recaps.
I'm gonna fight everyone.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we hadn't talked about that. Good for OC to get a goal.
And that paper thin margin of the difference in those players too. I think that's where you see the skill upside in a Ross Colton. And here's where I think it starts to get exciting. I won't get too far ahead, but I don't know what you do with Ross Colton when guys get healthy, but I think there is a world when guys do return to the lineup that third line does not look anything like it did last year. It actually is maybe some other team's second line. I think that you can still have a third line Ross Colton, but you reward him with pretty talented line mates.
Mhm.
And so I think you start to feel less bad about that, even if it's a third line role.
You and I kind of, again, maybe it's a little bit pie in the sky, but man, a Kovalenko, Colton, Landeskog third line sounds pretty appealing. Kovalenko, Colton, Landeskog.
I saw somebody really split this up and have a Landeskog, Colton, Lehkonen third line.
Whoa.
They put Kovalenko on the second line with Mittelstadt and Nichushkin. And the reason I kind of like it is the distribution of talent. The way it's like, all right, maybe, Lecky doesn't necessarily deserve a demotion to a third line.
Right.
But I sure like the way it's balanced, at least. It's one of those things that sounds good on paper, probably doesn't look the same in person, like whatever my idea was when I had OC on the top line briefly.
Hey.
And Mittelstadt was a winger briefly. Look, I understand there are things that sound great on paper, but I do think they're going to be finding themselves juggling the top nine in that way. I think top nine is a better way to refer to it too. It's going to really feel they're going to have so many options. There's going to be somebody playing on a third line who probably is on other teams' second line.
We talked a little bit about Mittelstadt already, so I'm going to ask it to you in a different way. Through 9 games, just what we've seen from him. I mean, like the Avs don't have a 2C problem anymore, right?
No.
Doesn't look like it to me.
So refreshing. I think when we get a little frustrated or worried, rightfully, around the goaltending situation, we have to understand the front office trying to juggle all of the team's needs and the challenges that come with it. This team needed a second line center. We saw the consequence, the price that they paid in trying to take an affordable route with the second line center position. It doesn't work. So they needed to invest in it a little bit. And I think they struck gold with Casey Mittelstadt. Like even his contract right now is just looking great for the near future. At that position, it's pretty resolved, and you feel really good about the fit with Mittelstadt there. Doesn't mean they should abandon goaltending and any concern around it, but it's not as if they aren't trying to solve problems, even though it does feel like this goaltending thing's like, how could they have done this? It's like they're trying to address these other things too.
Yeah, it's and we've talked about it several times. I do just feel like not only everything that you're seeing from Casey Mittelstadt, which I think is just getting more and more impressive by the day. He's young. This is a player that's still moldable. This is a player that is still going to continue growing into your system and hopefully growing with part of this core. And the fact that Nathan MacKinnon told us last week that he feels like he and Casey Mittelstadt think the game very similar, watch the game very similarly. To me, like, you want your top guys to click with your top guys. And the fact that Casey Mittelstadt feels at home and is working so closely with Nathan MacKinnon, is only good things. Last player that's still with the team that I want to talk about is Sam Malinski. 2 days in a row, Jared Bednar has kind of unprompted brought up Sam Malinski in a very positive way. A couple days ago, it was Sam Malinski's here because he earned it and beat other guys out and made other guys expendable. And then last night, when he split up Cale Makar and Devon Taves, he put Sam Malinski with Devon Taves. And when we asked why, or was it you who asked why?
Yeah.
He said,
I hated asking it too. It's like, I can predict what Jared Bednar will say to this question, but I still have to ask
I had to ask. Well, and truthfully, it was a little different than what I was expecting him to say. He said Sam was playing so well that we wanted to get him paired with Devon. That to me was, I didn't love what I was seeing from Devon Taves, so I put him with Sam Malinski. Quite the endorsement.
That's what I took away from it, because I'm positive. Because I really didn't think, Taves and Makar had a terrible night. I just think he identified when the game felt really in their hands. There was a comfort when it was that 2-0 game. Like, man, they're sitting pretty. That's where I think he felt he could afford to and I love what I see out of Malinski. What can I get out of this option? Because he previewed Taves and Malinski in the preseason too, and he's talked about wanting to get different looks and have Makar and Taves separated from each other at points. I think it's wise to do so too.
Yeah.
And I love that Malinski's getting rewarded with trust, with opportunity. And it's for the reasons we've talked about before with him. He's responsible. He toes the line of knowing when to activate, take risks in the offensive zone, but he also knows how to take care of his own end. And I think that it has suppressed a lot of opportunities for other teams to get really heated up on the cycle in the D zone. And Malinski's been a huge part of breaking that up, breaking the puck out, transitioning play up ice. And I'm glad to see him get rewarded for it and for him to do this on a consistent basis. I think that's what's rewarding him.
He's making Cale Makar plays out there.
And remember when we saw the Avs signing and we saw some highlights of Malinski in college? I think it was you who were like, I see shades of Cale Makar.
And it's the lateral movement. It's the way he can make guys miss. He had a play last night where, again, breaking out of the D zone, he looked like he was kind of stuck. Threw a quick little shoulder fake, kind of faked a pass and was able to curl back. And suddenly he had a bunch of speed coming out into open ice. And I said, that's stuff that we see Cale do. Take what looks like a nothing play, a dead end play, make a quick move your feet, and suddenly find open ice. He had another play last night where he was standing stagnant at the blue line, got the puck on his stick, and did that. I don't even know how to describe it. What we've seen Cale do, I swear to God, their feet move, but they don't actually move. Their feet move. They go, backhand, forehand, and they get guys to bite on that forehand, and then they just skate to their right, or I guess it'd be to their left because I'm a lefty there. Yeah. And it's just like, that's not normal defenseman stuff that we're seeing from Sam Malinski. And he told you and I a couple weeks ago, one of the biggest reasons he signed with the Colorado Avalanche as a college free agent was the prospect of being able to potentially play with Cale Makar. And I think the more and more we watch him, I understand why that was such a priority for him.
You know what made me excited too? When you brought that up when we walked away from that Malinski interview, I remembered the first time I ever talked to him in Loveland. Like, what made you choose Colorado?
Mm-hmm.
He talked about Cale Makar specifically then. And I just think back to how he likely fielded other NHL opportunities with decors that were probably more easy to break into.
Mm-hmm.
That probably had a quicker path to the NHL.
Probably could have played full-time in the NHL last year if he wanted to.
But there is then added significance to him choosing Colorado to play with the likes of Cale Makar. One, knowing he's going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
This is obviously before a Brandstrom or Shillington even enter the equation. He knows his path to the NHL is going to be made more challenging in choosing Colorado, but he just loves the way that they like to play Cale Makar very specifically so much that it's worth it to him.
Yeah.
I like the kind of player too who sees that in the face of a challenge, it will ultimately reward them the most, and that makes it worth it to them. I just love that so much.
He's been a bright spot early. I'm really anxious to see how he keeps going here. All right, I'm gonna fly through the last couple topics here. Megan, you and I just haven't had a chance to talk about Cal Ritchie since he was reassigned to the OHL. I think you and JJ did talk about it a little bit on Friday, but I thought you asked a great question to Jared Bednar over the weekend here. And I just wanted to unpack that a little bit. I'm just going to lay out quickly the way that I saw it. Then I want to hear from you because I love hearing your insight on prospects and development and all that. To me, Megan, so here's what's actually funny to me. I'd say that by game 3, I was sitting there saying, keep him. He's getting incrementally better every night. I think he looks like he's adjusting. He looks like he's making improvements. Keep him, and by the trade deadline, you'll be happy you kept him. And then for the next 4 games, I felt like it was a little bit worse and a little bit worse and a little bit worse. And then it was his worst game so far, and then he was out of town. So to me, he actually kind of went in the opposite direction that the Avs went as a team, where they struggled in the first few and then really caught on. I thought Cal Ritchie looked like a young player still figuring out the league, but someone who was getting better and was learning. And then it very rapidly just looked like it was too much for him.
Yeah. The mistakes that were made were the kind that I think late in the season would have greatly affected his ice time and role and opportunity. And in seeing him in more of like a third line role, he struggled more. You know, he wasn't getting the McKinnon bump that we're kind of joking around right now with the Ross Coltons. He wasn't benefiting from it as much, first of all. And two, when he was resigning to more of a third line role, he struggled in that. And I think that this is a player I will never worry about confidence, but his confidence wasn't where it needed to be for a full season in the NHL. That's the issue. I think that there was too much pause at times in his game, and he was still figuring out the pace of it too. And so I've talked about this, I feel like a broken record, but just not being able to find seams, get pucks through because of a timing issue, not because of a skill issue. This is such a highly skilled player. And it's something he was figuring out quickly, but also still struggling with in the brief look that we had at him. And then similarly, the mistakes, you know, in his own end. There were things that you would see he would try to do that he could get away with in the OHL that are not going to work here. Those are the kinds of things that I think he figures out at the end of the day. But I've talked at length about the runway that the Avs have right now because of the window of compete that they're in. That they just can't afford to have the development plan to roll him out into the NHL more gradually in a more sheltered way throughout the course of this year, the way that other organizations like a San Jose with a Will Smith or an Anaheim with Leo Carlson could have done last year. They just can't afford to do it the same way. And even those teams are struggling with their young players. Those are the growing pains that come with them. The Avs can't afford the growing pains. They need solutions. They need guys who can help them right now, especially being down so many bodies. I don't doubt Cal Ritchie's NHL upside for a second. I think he could have found ways to be more effective in the NHL if he was given a full season worth, but I still don't think he would have been trustworthy come playoffs. And that's where I think that became the issue, the biggest issue too. And I still think there's so much for him left at the OHL level because I have faith in who Cal Ritchie is as a player, that he can find ways to grow and to challenge himself no matter where he is.
So you aren't worried about him like going back and having like nothing to gain out of the OHL? You think that there's plenty there for him?
No, I think it's too black and white. In a perfect world, he'd be in the American League. I don't discount that for a second, but I still think there is room for him to separate from his peers even more so. And I talked about this with JJ, but because of the shoulder injury in his draft year, he missed an important development year that I think doesn't necessarily set him behind, but there's more to learn. You know, he needs to go and separate from his peers. He's a part of a leadership group in Oshawa, so he also needs to be a leader. Jared Bednar talked about how players of Cal Ritchie's caliber are going to produce in the OHL. He needs Cal Ritchie to be more than that, though. So it's not just the production that needs to stand out. The growth in his game needs to be at both ends of the ice. And I think that he was already building up to be that kind of a player, but there's more. In as recently as, you know, the World Junior Showcase and the Rookie Faceoff, I don't feel he's separated from his peers in an as obvious way as a Macklin Celebrini. That's where I see that there's still room for him to grow. And then, of course, there's the opportunity to represent Team Canada and World Juniors, which he could have still done with the Avs.
Right.
But that's another stage for him to go and to compete and to stand out and separate on. That I still think that this next year with the Avs too, in Jared Bednar's answer and how closely Brian Wilsey and Andrew Cogliano are going to be in person working with him. And he described, you know, there's the schedule that the Oshawa Generals have that is going to play out with Cal Ritchie. Then the Avs have other things on top of it. There's all this additional work that they're building in. I think he's going to continue to be challenged. I think they're going to give it the attention, the care, the TLC that is needed. And it's exciting to imagine him in the NHL lineup in the near future because I go back to that Utah preseason game and that ridiculous move on Mamelka, and I'm just still so excited about this player, but I'm not surprised that they had to make that decision.
And you used the word there at the beginning, confidence, and you said, you know, it's not something I'm worried about with him, but Jared Bednar made that comment to you over the weekend of, you know, when you asked about Cal, and he said there's a confidence that he plays with at the OHL level where he demands the puck. And he said, we just didn't see that at the NHL level. And that goes, a little bit back to what I was mentioning earlier with Ross Colton playing next to McKinnon and Rantanen. I feel like there's, whether you're stepping up from a different league to the NHL, from you're a call-up player, or whether you're a player that normally plays down lineup, you're being asked to play at the top of the lineup with the skill guys. There's healthy scratch guys that can get like, there can be this, and I don't know if it's necessarily like not trusting their abilities or what, but there seems to be an extra layer of thinking that goes into it that can sometimes take players away from what it is they do well, take from their confidence that they feed on. And they're just like, well, I just got to not make any mistakes, and I got to be out here, and I got to make sure that Nathan McKinnon gets the puck, and I got to, they're so worried about doing the right thing, they stop thinking about what they are good at and what has gotten them there. And it felt to me a little bit like that was Cal Ritchie's probably, there was a lot of different individual things you could point to. Like at its core, it's like they want you to go out there and be the confident offensive force that you are. And again, if you do the right things, you're going to put yourself in the position to do that. I felt like he didn't have that confidence. He wasn't out there saying, I am a dominant offensive player. Give me the puck. I'm going to make a play. It was just too passive a little bit from him out there. And maybe that's just way too blanketed. Everything that you're saying, I think you're spot on with, that evaluation of his time. But I for me, like I said, at the core of it all, that wasn't a player that did not look confident enough in his abilities to be at this level.
No, it's like he's still involved in the play, but as more of a recipient than a distributor. And that's not who Cal Ritchie is.
Right.
So yes, there's still confidence there, but there was a confidence that he showed at the junior level that I think left the coaching staff wanting, because it's like, but we know what you're capable of. We know there's an even more confident player that I think they want to bring out and have him just get bigger, stronger too. Yep. He did get significantly bigger, stronger coming into this camp, but there's still more room to grow.
Yep. 100%. Let's talk briefly. And you know what I'm actually going to do after this show? I'm going to jump on Puckpedia and try to make this all work money-wise. But we were asked a lot about last night. We got several questions about, let's say you can snap your fingers and they're healthy tomorrow. What do your lines look like? I'll run through mine just kind of quickly. On the forward side, we'll probably leave the D alone just because that's not really changing.
We're cloning Cale Makar.
Right. But for me, Megan, I'm trying to think if I want to steal completely what you and I talked about last night.
Well, I intentionally said something different. So
okay.
Share with the class.
Okay, all right. Well, because what did you and I say last night? We said Val, Nate, and Drouin, Lehkonen, Mittelstadt, Rantanen, Kovalenko, Colton, Landeskog, and then I think we said Wood, O'Connor,
Ivan. I'm just kidding.
Well,
I'm kidding.
You and I did say like
Parker Kelly, Ivan.
Was a center, right? It's one of those two, likely.
Is Parker Kelly a center any more than Ivan?
Exactly. That's so. Honestly, where I'm at right now is you wait till you're healthy and whoever's playing better of the two of those. Because Ivan right now has given me zero reason to say he shouldn't be in this lineup every night.
Right.
But true. So that's what you and I kind of said last night. I've kind of remained consistent in that I would flip-flop Lecky and Val there. I'd go Lehkonen, McKinnon, Drouin, just because we've seen that line together. They played really well. We've seen Rantanen and Mittelstadt together in the playoffs a little bit this year. And I really like it. So that's what I personally probably do is I'd go Lecky, Nate, Drouin, Val, Mittelstadt, Mikko. I love Kovalenko, Colton, Landeskog. And then, you go Wood. If he's not training. Wood, O'Connor. And then right now, to me, I'm with you. Ivan is just as much of a center as Parker Kelly is in my eyes right now.
And I recognize the way in which that's a bold take, but I think it's okay.
I think it's all right.
I stand by it.
Yeah, stand there.
It's only, there's not enough information yet, except
right.
Ivan has been utilized as a center his whole life through this point, to include at the American League level, which I just want to say, when guys have come from the junior level, they usually get relegated to the wing, even being career centers through that point. Not Ivan, though. They recognize the potential in keeping him down the middle. I just don't think that's worth nothing. The organization has moved so many guys, like a Foodie or a Shane Bowers, to the wing the minute they get to the pro level, but not Ivan.
Yeah.
They're committed to making him into a center. Now, I don't want to rush his timeline and then, be it detrimental to him, but I just think that there is untapped potential there that we're still being shown. And Parker Kelly, it's, he's kind of similarly being moved to the middle and adapting to that. So they're both kind of newly figuring this out at the NHL level.
Kiviranta is my 13th, by the way. Do you have a different set of 4 lines you'd go with?
I mean, I what was that funky third line I had a second ago? That was the Landeskog, Colton. Was it?
Oh, Lehkonen.
Lehkonen. I don't know if I like that, to be honest with you. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I like Kivi as the 13th forward, though.
Yeah.
He hasn't done anything wrong.
No.
He didn't really do anything wrong last year. I think that you wanted to see a little more production from him. So he can take the Logan O'Connor route where he just at least surpasses his personal best year by year. Like LOC's points totals were never jumping off the page at you, but he gradually got better year by year.
Well, I feel like Kiviranta is right now one of those, like, he's either doing nothing or scoring every night. Like, he was so good in the playoffs last year, but in the run up to the playoffs, like, I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who would say that he was playing exceptionally well. And then again, like all through camp and preseason, it's like, yeah, that's Yoel Kiviranta. And then he scores, 3 games in a row, 4 goals in 3 games.
It was a little bit funny. But
to me, that is those lines that we just laid out. You're looking at some version of that. Maybe a couple guys flip-flopped here and there. But that's a Stanley Cup contender to me, Megan.
Easily. I will say, too, like, I'm still mulling over Parker Kelly and Ivan. This is a funny thing to be attached to, but Parker Kelly has actually been a great addition to the PK. And that might be the feather in his cap that helps to keep him around and to stick. And I would need to see him utilized in a 4th line role the way he was intended.
He's got to do something with the puck on his stick, though. There was 3 separate instances last night where you and I made comments. It's like
Wagner and Kelly. It's like, this needs to be done.
Yes. Yep, I agree with you. All right, last thing I've got on the docket for today. I said we were going to circle back to goalies. We don't need to spend a crazy amount of time here, as this is what everyone is talking about, is what I was trying to say. But Megan, we can't let this go by. Look, since the last time we did a show, Jussi Sananen has gotten his 4th consecutive start. And on top of that, for the first time since the Avs acquired Alexander Georgiev, even with Pavel Francouz still in town, this Saturday was the first time that Jared Bednar did not come right out and say unequivocally, Alexander Georgiev is our number 1. He said they will not be naming a starter in advance, quote, for a while, and that the goaltenders are earning their ice time the same as every other player. This is a shift in tone. Full stop. Jared Bednar has always shut down any kind of conversation like this. Alex is our number 1. Georgie's our top guy. He's who we're going with. No, he actually said, I don't care. We're playing the goalie who we think gives us the best chance to win. Are you ready to use the words goalie controversy, Megan? Or do you want to wait till after tonight? Because you said 10 games.
I guess I need to establish what is a goalie controversy, because to me, this doesn't feel controversial. It feels pretty clear cut. You've got 3 goaltenders competing for the starter's net. To me, that's not controversial, but maybe it is to not have a clear cut starting goaltender 10 games in. I guess that is maybe a little controversial, because I look at other teams that I think have great goalie tandems, but there's also usually a pretty clear number 1. And maybe it's because the Avs have had an unconventional approach to goaltending that I'm not finding this controversial. And maybe that is a problem. Maybe I have some kind of Stockholm syndrome. Like, I don't see the issue here. What do you mean having 3 goaltenders vying for the starting job isn't good? And it's not. You know what? It's not, because you look at a 7-game series.
Right.
That's when
this is
That's when this is a problem. But I also don't think this is something that persists. I think the Avs use this opportunity to evaluate their options, and they make some more finite decisions. And this could be a trade deadline issue, down the line if this doesn't get resolved in a way that anybody feels comfortable with, because it does need to get resolved.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing that Georgiev isn't the clear-cut starter.
Right. And I mean, the part to me that I find where, again, I guess I could sit there and say controversy is, I think a month ago, Georgie was the number one. He was the number one. Eustace is the clear backup. And as of right now, October 28th, I agree with you, Megan. This is a full toss-up in my eyes. There is no number one. They're wanting to find out who that is. And you've got three different options. I said last week on the show that it was a huge week coming up for Annunen, who we knew was going to get a start on the road trip. There was a theory of someone that I don't know if they want me to say that this was their theory. They haven't put it out there yet, but I was talking to someone who they were saying that their theory was that they rolled Annunen out on the first game of the road trip to kind of like, well, if he shits the bed tonight, then we'll waive him, send him down, and we got our two. And it kind of went the opposite direction. And that has almost kind of stirred up this, well, we thought we were going to be able to eliminate one, and he's ended up emerging as the front runner. So Annunen has done his job for the last week. Now I think the pressure shifts to Georgiev to match that performance. And Kähkönen just gets to come in and play loose and fast and free and see if he can steal some minutes. So is Georgiev? All right, let's play a really fun game. Let's say this continues to play out the way that we're seeing it. Georgie's fine, never reclaims it. Annunen establishes himself as the starter for this season. Well, you're saying you need to do something to make the money work earlier. I don't know. Do the Avs get to any point this season before the trade deadline where they say maybe Alexander Georgiev is expendable for us? I'm completely spitballing here, but I don't know. Do you see, or is that something where it's like, if they end up going to Eustace, they may want a Georgie waiting in the wings, just in case.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how they feel about Kähkönen, because I could see maybe those feel like similar backup options if this hypothetical plays out that way. Because you look at, one, what other needs does the team need to address? Has Landeskog returned? Does he look healthy? Does he look good? Or is there an issue on the forward side that they really want to address? And maybe they're feeling great about Jussi Saarinen, and Kähkönen's also come in and played some great games. I think that because it's a contract year for Georgiev and he'll hit free agency otherwise and probably be among some of the best goaltending options in free agency this summer, if it came to it, he would be a really valuable trade piece for teams that are desperate for a goaltending solution right now.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that would be the most ridiculous thing to suggest if all of those other things played out exactly that way.
Yeah. We got a comment in there that says the problem is that 40 is being paid to be the number one. Kinda.
It's like, yeah, it's a
kinda.
That's what would make him such a valuable trade piece too.
Right.
Is he's actually a relatively affordable goaltending option, especially with the
Yes.
trend we've seen with goaltending extensions as recently as this season. Georgiev finishing out the year on the rest of his current contract would be a little easier for a lot of teams to absorb than most goalies out there.
He makes 3.4 for a number one goaltender, which is what he was brought in to be. Like, that is on the low end. Someone actually was in the chat last week saying, like, the problem is you get what you pay for, and he's one of the lowest paid goaltenders in the league that starts more than 45 games every year. So that's actually part of what makes this so palatable, and part of the reason why the Avs don't pay big money to goaltenders is because you never know what you're really going to get. It's pretty up and down, save for a couple guys. And so, no, that is the one part of all of this that the Avs actually have going for them, is that they're very cheap in net.
Yeah, which has led to the issues that we're talking about right now.
Of course.
This
give and take to it.
Exactly. And I think that's why it doesn't feel controversial, because we've been in this weird room with goaltenders with the Avs for a little bit. And it's not necessarily a good or a comfortable place, but we've seen how it can work in the end. And I think that they'll just have to make some tough decisions I don't know how in the near future either. They have a little bit of time to give all three of these options a look. So
Yep.
that's what I think I don't dislike or has not caused me to panic just yet is I'm interested for the goalie battle. I think competition's good and healthy.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm looking at tonight is Kakinen showed up and in my opinion really pushed Annunen to play better and to figure it out because suddenly there was someone in town that it's like, yeah, that guy's here for your job. If you can't keep it, that's exactly what that guy is here for. And it seems like that was a great motivator for him. Well, Alexander Georgiev is on the verge of losing his starting job. You got to go reclaim it tonight. Like you've got to find a way to get your game in order and take that starting job back, or at least start chipping back away at it and earning starts and now stealing minutes away from Annunen. And you want to see if he can do that. If this type of, if a lack of job security can't get you motivated, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it just doesn't make much sense.
Right.
You know, we've had concerns around his ability to bounce back mentally. This is just another one of those challenges that we need to see him overcome. Or he doesn't make a lot of sense as the starter.
Right. No, you're 100% right. So we're going to learn a lot about Georgiev, what the Avs plans and options are in net here quickly. Do you have anything else, Megan?
I don't think so.
Is there a comment that has your eye?
I can't really read them super well, so I'm actually just reading them normally. It's not, it's not like there's anything like, what did this guy say? They're actually very normal comments.
We are kind of a dramatic beat here. I do like the drama. And Megan and JJ will always indulge me on it. Is there anything else in there, Chloe, that you've seen coming in that we maybe haven't been able to read that you really liked? We need to get Chloe on the show one of these days.
Yeah. She has some good ideas. Like you publicly apologizing to Joel Kiviranta.
Never. No, I'm just kidding.
And it's like become now you hate all of the Finns.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, they I was telling Megan last night at the game, I said, here's my not even beef, but just like here's my thing with players like Kiviranta and Parker Kelly. And obviously I intentionally am a little bit hard on those guys to be funny, but those players are just so tough because they're amazing hockey players. Like on the scale of overall hockey player, they're amazing. They're unbelievable. They're in the top 1%. But like just at the NHL level, your Kivirantas, your Kellys, like those just are the types of players where like last night was even a roller coaster for Parker Kelly. Some really good moments, some moments where it's like, what are you doing? Some moments where it's like, why is this guy out here? And you just live with that with players of that caliber. That sometimes they are highly effective NHL players. Other times it's like, oh, that's why you're a fourth line bubble guy. Got it.
But see, we're spoiled to have had the LOC development arc where
Totally.
He would say, if you can't bring your A game, you bring your B game.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, the difference between one, how LOC has carved out a very solid NHL career, but I think it's because the lows for a Kelly type or a Kiviranta type, man, they're glaring.
They're low, yeah. It's great.
And it stands out in a bad way, but I like them both.
I was trying to think of something funny to say. They're both great guys. They're great to chat with. They work super hard, but I think that's the best way of putting it, Megan.
Kiviranta's great to chat with.
They're nice guys. I didn't say he was great to chat with. I said they're nice guys.
They're both really nice.
They're very nice. Kivy doesn't ever have much to say, but they're all very nice. But I think that's a great point. Is those guys can sometimes end up with C, D, or F games. Logan O'Connor, it is rare that he has anything other than an A or a B game. And I think that's the difference. It's you see those D games out there for the Kellys and the Kivirantas, and it's like, oh my gosh.
It's hard.
But again, if this team gets healthy,
Every team
not
has
really
that part
having
of the
to do with that.
lineup
Right,
too
right.
that you have to just kind of live with.
And that was, I think, what makes the 2022 team so special was that fourth line was like among their most effective.
Yeah.
The O'Connor, Cogliano, Helm line, like that was not built as your standard fourth line. And so yeah, that and maybe that's the other part of it too, where like I just sit here and I'm like, I remember Cogs, Helm, and OC, this fourth line. You kids in your fourth lines today. I
already forgot who the projected fourth line was. Wood, Ivan, OC?
Yeah.
Was that who it was?
Mhm.
All right. You feel a little weird in the middle, like maybe.
But like I love I love
Wood
the
and
work
OC.
ethic.
Yeah. No, I love the work ethic there. I want to see. I mean, his trajectory is always, it's been fast. So I don't know what we're going to get out of him.
Tomorrow, maybe we get a little bit into what you and I talked just briefly about last night. You need $2.5 million to clear. There's a certain bottom six winger right now that makes exactly that much who has struggled out of the gates this year. We will talk about that a little bit tomorrow. Chloe, you got to come on the show at some point this week, just as a heads up. But that's going to do it. Unless you got anything else. That's it. We'll get out of here. For today, we got the game tonight, so we'll have all of your great game night content coming to you guys from Ball Arena. Myself, Megan, will both be there, bringing you guys everything from tonight. So, for Chloe, back there running the board, that's Meghan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. Thanks so much for hanging out. We will talk to you on the pod tomorrow. Talk to you from the rink tonight. Have a good one, everybody.